Hey, welcome to Making It Fun, everybody. I am your host, Rob Appell from Michael Miller Fabrics, and we are doing yet another very special interview with one of our brand ambassadors for 2021. I'm dying for you to meet my new friend from the Sewing Loft. Let's get started. That is right, everybody. We are back in the studio for yet another awesome interview with one of our amazing 2021 Michael Miller brand ambassadors. I'm super excited to introduce all of you to Heather Valentine from the Sewing Loft. Hey, Heather, how are you?
Very well. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm super excited you could join us today. Where are you virtually coming to us from?
From sunny North Carolina. It's about 95 degrees here today.
Ooh, now it's going to get a lot hotter though, right, as summer builds up?
Oh, yes, sir. It will. Humidity too. A lot of humidity.
That was my next question. Is it will be one of those places if I wanted my curls to do awesome things, I should just come stand outside for about 5 minutes?
Yes, my hair grows.
The bigger the better?
I don't know about that. It's not the 80s anymore.
Yeah, but you don't have to use Aquanet, so think about where you're going, right?
Oh, that's true. I'm saving the environment one can at a time.
I love it. I love it. I know I'm being silly, but I really think that Aquanet, that giant pink can is what became the spray base that so many of us use. And, if a little was good, a lot was better. So I want to discourage all of you from over spray basting your quilts if you're a spray baster. It's not like when I had my bangs going straight up and I needed that extra holding power.
I had the wave. I had a big wave.
Very nice. Awesome. Well, I probably shouldn't drag out the interview too much. I want to dive in because I've got a million questions to ask you. But really, let's just make sure everybody understands what's going on here. So we do every year pick a group of folks to be our brand ambassadors. And that's one of the things where you all apply for and then you get accepted and all that. And we will talk about that in a little bit. But I want you all to know a bunch about Heather. So we've got a really, really cool blog called Making It Fun. I know you'll love the name. MakingItFunblogspot.com, and you can read about all of the ambassadors, and Heather's got a great write-up. But something I want to hear a lot about, so I'm just going to kind of turn the microphone over to you, Heather, if you will, is tell us about your background kind of starting at that New York Fashion Institute or Design Institute or whatever. I'm sure I've said it wrong, but this to me is mind-blowing that you've studied and so exciting. Please tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I have always sewn. I just was fascinated by it. My mother sewed, my grandmother sewed, all the women in my family always were at the machine. And it was something that I just became really passionate about early on. And I knew that fashion was just going to be my jam, lifelong, going to be involved. So I studied in high school, and then I went to FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology. Graduated there and then was in the garment industry for 20 years. So my job in the garment industry was to make sure that the designers who sketch all those pretty black and white and colorful, drawings could come to life. So I would make the patterns, I would go to the factories, I would figure out how many stitches per inch were on that garment. I would tell the designers that that's a great picture, but that you would never be able to get it over your head.
Oh, right. Maybe they didn't have the right materials or something like that. So you helped bring it to life.
Yeah, so I would do the patterns, I would fit the models, and then I would go over to the factories and help the factories make the first garment look just as good as the last garment that came off, so that when we saw them in a retail environment, whether you picked up a small, medium, or large, it all fit the same. And whether you got the first small that was on the rack or the last small, that they all were uniform and had the same quality.
Wow, and you were doing all of that in New York, like New York City proper? My brain is thinking of just the hustle and bustle of the fashion world of New York?
Yep, and I traveled all over the world, from Turkey to Singapore to Malaysia. I went to factories all over Chinatown. I was there. It was really fun. And I learned very quickly that you don't need to speak the same language to communicate to people. So I was very nervous in the beginning. When I went my first trip, I was really young, and I traveled there by myself and then met someone there. And I was like, gosh, I don't know the language. What am I going to do? And you know what? You can really communicate. You don't have to speak exactly the same language, especially when you're working on something that you love.
Right. Yeah, so fashion is kind of a universal language because you can point to a seam or you can point to a drawing and say this isn't going to, no stretchy or whatever you want to say. And
yeah, and like one thing that I really remember from Malaysia was I was there in March and it was super hot, and let's face it, I'm really pale and I've got a lot of freckles, right? So I'm not the proper skin for that area. And I was making jackets. I was showing them how to set a sleeve into a suit jacket, and they didn't understand it. So I went into the pressing department and I had all the gals that were working on the sleeves try on the jackets. So we had one sleeve that was set in wrong, and I explained to them what it should feel like. And then I went to the machine and I set the other sleeve in properly, and I pressed it so that it just gently rolled forward, and they tried it on and I'm like, see, now you can move around. And because they didn't ever wear jackets before, like that type of jacket, they were able to understand.
right. And I'm going to embarrass you a little bit. You said you were pretty young when you went over there, but I think you also said you did this for 20 years. You don't look like you're but 20 years old right now. So like, how young could you have been when you first traveled by yourself overseas into a world with foreign languages and foreign people and food and fashion and all of that?
Yeah, I was 23, 24.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I can imagine I was living out of a van at that point in my life, just trying to snowboard at all the different mountains around Colorado. So not quite the same adventure, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. That my first trip to Malaysia was a little it was interesting. I landed and it was late at night, and there was no board saying, "Hey, here's your driver." And I just remember we were driving, and about 2 hours into the trip, the driver pulled over on like some back road, got out of the car, did his biz, and didn't tell me he was leaving. And I was like, oh my God, am I gonna make it?
And that was before cell phones, so you had no mapping with you. You had no way to really communicate or text. You were like in the middle of nowhere, all by yourself, young lady traveling. Good for you. Good for you. I love that. That's rad. Well, now, I've been talking to Heather for a little while before we got ready to do this interview, and I will tell you she is a very hands-on individual, and I think she's pretty much a rock star when it comes to bravery and adventure. So I'm pretty excited about getting to know you more. Now, but what brought you out of the fashion industry then? Or maybe, oh, by the way, you can always say pass on any of these questions.
So I was doing the same things over and over again, and I worked for a company that I'm sure many of you who have kids have had that clothing in your closet, and I was tired of making the same types of projects, the same types of clothing, so to speak. Cargo pants, 3-layer jackets, t-shirts, all that stuff. And my husband really noticed it, and he was like, I think it's time for you to pursue your own thing and stop building someone else's dream. And it happened really rather quickly. Like, I came home from work one day and he was like, hey, I wrote something for you on the computer. I think you should go check it out. And we had little ones at home, and I was like, yeah, whatever. I got to make dinner, and this one needs a bath, and all that jazz. And after dinner, I sat down to watch TV, and he's like, what are you doing? Did you look at the computer? And I'm like, no, I've totally forgot. And he's like, turned the TV off, got me up, and told me to go look at it. And right there, it was my resignation.
I was just going to guess. It was your letter of resignation. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. He was like, there'll never be a good time, and our kids are at a place that we can figure it out. He's like, you've got 5 to 10 years to make it happen, and if you don't do it now, you may regret it. So I don't want you to have any regrets in life. Go do it. So it took a little while for me to say, okay, but it was like jumping off a cliff. It was really scary.
So you didn't just hit send in the next 10 seconds. You sat there and looked at that letter for a real long time, I bet.
It took about...
Sure, he had all the spelling correct, of course. Yeah, right. You didn't want to have any grammatical errors in case you needed to retract it later on. Okay, now you danced over a couple of things that are important. We talk about this with all the brand ambassadors. Married, you said, and kiddos. You want to touch on your family life real quick?
Sure. So I'm married to my high school sweetheart. I know that's kind of corny, but I met him in high school and we are still together. We have 2 children. I have one that is 21 and another one that is 17, and they are both actively pursuing something in the fashion world, which is kind of cool. So it'll be the 5th generation for us if they do something in that vein.
Oh, wow. Wait, you can't just blow over 5 generations like that. So lots of different levels of your family have been into fashion then.
Yeah, so I'll tell you like just a quick little story, but like my great grandmother was actually brought over to the States. She immigrated to the States thanks to the Coates and Clark family. She was Mrs. Coates' personal seamstress, and they sponsored her to come and live, in the States. So I mean, like, how cool is that?
Right, and your third aunt was Betsy Ross.
That's why I always have the massive American flag outside. Yes.
She was the personal tailor, you said, for the Coates and Clark company owner. That's huge.
She was Lady Coates' personal seamstress, and she would go with her to all the fashion shows, and then so the story goes, generation to generation, that they passed down, that she would go and that Lady Coates would pick out the items that she liked, and then my great grandmother would make them, which is really cool.
So cool. So for so many reasons too, because we have heard about the brand Coates and Clark for a million years, or the Coates company for a million years, right? Pretty neat to know that they were really involved in what they were doing. I mean, that was not only do you have firsthand information from sitting around the table, well, you weren't, but the family was getting to hear about it. But like to know that no wonder the company stood the test of time, as they were passionately involved as well. And I think that passion really goes a long way. Yeah, really, really cool. So I'm sorry, I got us distracted though, and I'm still in a little bit of the shock about I'm kind of like, now I feel like I know Lady Coates herself also, which is pretty cool. Okay, so married with 2 kids. I think you told me now you're no longer in New York. You're living elsewhere.
Right, we're living in North Carolina, and I have 2 French bulldogs. They pretty much rule the roost.
Yes. Names, please.
Oh, Tucker and Levi. Tucker's my pretty boy, and Levi is the junkyard dog.
Love it. Love it. And are they under your feet right now?
Surprisingly, no. My daughter came home and they followed her upstairs. So, you never know, they may come running down, but, fingers crossed you'll maybe get a glimpse.
Do they have a bed in your sewing room? They have their own little bed?
I have a chair, and they sleep on the chair or directly on my foot when I'm on the sewing machine. So like if my foot is sewing, the one Tucker will literally lay like between the desk and the foot pedal. No idea. I mean, no idea why.
Pedal to the metal is completely been redefined, it sounds like there. Oh my gosh.
Been a few times where I've been taping and I've like moved from the machine, like my foot's off the machine and everything, and all of a sudden the machine starts going, and it's because he's moved and he's now on the foot, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
I was so hoping you would say that. I once was demonstrating a sewing machine when I used to work at a dealership, my mom's sewing machine dealership. I was sewing away and I moved away from the machine and it just kept on running, and I had accidentally been sewing and I pushed the foot control under the table far enough, because it was a table that had machines on both sides, that I accidentally got the foot control underneath the foot of a chair on the other side. We had those wonderful koala chairs that had the nice ornate front end, and I got it caught, and it just kept running, and I was panicking, and that was the only time I've ever had a machine that just kept running when I wasn't there. But if you've got a bulldog sleeping on there, that could happen a lot, right?
Yeah, they get friendly here. They like to be here a lot.
Another great segue though for me, Heather. Thank you. It's almost like you knew I needed help interviewing you today or something, but you mentioned filming, and I know that you've got a really cool YouTube channel. Now it's under your name, but I found it by actually Googling or searching the Sewing Loft. But one of the things that I noticed was the videos that some of the videos how do I say this and not make it sound weird? I was gonna say some of the videos I love. I actually really enjoyed all of the videos that I watched. I just haven't watched them all. What I loved about the ones I saw were they were quick. So many of the folks say, Rob, you're a little long-winded. You can drag a 3-minute project into like 4 days worth of sewing, which you're welcome. We like sewing, right? But yeah, Heather's videos are super fun, super fast, like bursts of energy, but you get all the information. And so like, that's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yeah, so the best way for me to do it is I use 2 cameras going at the same time, and then I just layer them over, and I try to do as much prep work as possible, making sure that like all my cut pieces are ready to go, and you know, you learn as you go. So I have noticed great growth in my shots since I've started doing them to today, and I hope that I can only get better over time.
Well, one of the things I was very, very attracted to when we saw all the brand ambassador stuff coming across the desk was the photography you were taking from your actual projects. And I think we all know that's a big game now for our designers and our ambassadors, people that are trying to make it for themselves using social media. Like, I was standing in line at a Starbucks with my daughter, and there were some teenage girls in front of us, and I could not believe the speed at which their thumbs could navigate across Instagram and how quickly they could like or dislike whatever you were doing and how fast that content was going. So like I said, your photos I love them. They're full of energy, they're full of light, they're full of movement. You're doing all of this work yourself, I assume, the photos and the videos?
I am. I do all of it myself. I use a tripod to make it easy. Like all of the block photos that you see where I'm holding, I've got the tripod set up in my studio, and I use the timer, and I literally have to run around my desk and hope that I'm in the right position.
Well, that's where that energy is coming from, the jumping in front of the camera at the last second, you know? What a great trick.
A few times. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. No, you can just see they're super fun. And so with the videos, you're making your own videos in the same room that you're sitting in right now, I understand.
Yeah, so everything gets done here, from the computer work to the sewing work, the videos, pretty much everything. You know, the kids come in after school or whatever, like it's all this room. This room is probably the most used outside of the kitchen in the house.
Fantastic. And now, has it always been that way, or is that mostly due to like COVID and the fortunately I can say the shutdown we're now coming out of, or has this always been part of your major work plan, your workflow?
Yeah, so from the moment we moved into this house, this room was always my studio, which has been wonderful. It's just taken on like a couple of metamorphoses over the years, where I had, you know, like a desk built and some bookshelves and things of that nature, but everything's always been in this room. And it's not a big room. I'll let you in on a little secret. It's not a big room, so you know, I mean, to get it all jammed in here and not have it be a constant disaster is kind of crazy. But I have a closet that is like Monica's closet that nobody wants to admit to. I cannot even open it up usually without something falling out.
Right? As long as it's not the bowling ball off the top shelf, we're okay.
Yeah, no, it's all sewing supplies or all fabrics, things like that. The worst that has happened is the iron has slipped, and I caught it like just as it was slipping.
Oh, that can be very, very problematic. Oh my gosh.
Especially on your foot, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let me then pick your brain a little bit, and before we get into your show and tell of the quilts that you've been working on in that small space. So brand ambassadorship, you know, obviously you're a brave gal because you're out there, you're doing the videos, and oh, and by the way, I forgot to tell everybody, a lot of the video classes that you're doing are on the Annie's website, right? Am I saying that correctly? You really should plug yourself.
I do a lot of videos for Annie's Creative Studio, and I think there's about 75 of them that are live now, and I filmed about 100. So there is really something for everybody there, and I'm one of many instructors that you really, if you're interested in learning on video at your own pace in your pajamas or whatever, you really should check it out.
Oh, good plug. And is there something that you specialize in, or you said 100 videos, so it's kind of broad range, or what would folks come hunting for to find Heather there in Sewing Loft there?
Yeah, so I do a lot of quick hitter projects. Like I love the self-satisfaction that I get and feel at the end of an afternoon sitting at a machine knowing that, hey, I started and I finished something. Like I made this. Like how cool is that, right? You want to be at a machine and feel like you've done something and not like, gosh, it's going to take me like another 5 sessions at the machine. You want to have the win. And that's kind of what I do a lot of.
Right.
And they range from, smalls to quilts. It could really be anything.
Right. But you also consider yourself to be a bit scrap happy, don't you? Like, are you kind of a scrappy gal?
Yeah, so my motto is I've never met a piece of fabric that I didn't like, and I don't like to throw it out.
I actually designed 2 different lines of fabric. I should send you some of my stuff and see if you can keep that sentence alive that you haven't met a piece of fabric you don't like. I might be able to change that for you. Yeah, I probably could change that for you. That's awful. But okay, so one of the things as a brand ambassador is it's kind of like Christmas morning is you get a box in the mail, whether you wanted it or not. And then we just start cracking the whip, just start emailing you every 5 minutes. When's the project coming? When's the project coming? Like we're really mean about it. And I'm being silly, but how is that being scraptastic and all, and yet finding an entire collection that's all supposed to be matchy-matchy to work with?
So it's definitely been a learning curve, and I have to tell you I was very apprehensive about even putting my name in the ring to be a brand ambassador because of it, but I've never truly worked on a lot of projects all from one manufacturer, that every fabric was from one manufacturer, and I have to say that I'm incredibly impressed. I'm just going to say it right up front that the fabric is uniform whether the print is a light print or a dark print, and I have such massive respect for that because I have been overseas in factories trying to get the color of the fabric just right or the print just right. So I understand what it takes that goes into the process. And some of the quilts that I've worked on are very, very dark, but they also have pieces that are white. And it's important where you have uniformity so that when if you're quilting, that your long armor has, that nice level and all that stitches will look perfect when it's all done. You put so much effort into making a quilt, you want to make sure that the products you are using to make it match that level.
Yeah, well, good point. And I appreciate you talking about the quality and the level. We work hard at Michael Miller to make sure that the hand and the finish is really, really nice. But so I'd like to know why you submitted then. You just said you were vacillating back and forth on the fence about submitting, knowing that you were going to be challenged with the scrappy nature of your normal shtick. So what got you over the fence? Did your husband write that letter too? What happened there?
No. So I like to push myself. I think that if I stayed in one position, I wouldn't grow. So I thought that it would be a great opportunity for me to, try new things and expand my personal style in a new way. And I think that so far it's been a good fit.
Right. Were you nervous to hit submit on that one?
On which one, to actually say yes that I was
actually submitting the application? Was that
nervous? I just wasn't sure if I would be selected because I'm so scrappy.
So then obviously the next question is what did it feel like to be selected? Could you tell me about that day?
Yeah, so I was really surprised. I was really excited about it. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be sewing a lot this year. And that's been fun, from the whole process of the first onboarding package with getting to understand some of the products that you use, that you actually manufacture that are beyond just fabrics. So it's been fun to educate myself more on that respect, and then to actually dive in and learn how to really use all these fabrics from a collection. That has definitely pushed my comfort zone, and I'm liking the direction that it's going in.
Now, Heather, I noticed you're talking about working within a lines, but I've seen some of the photography, like I said, very attractive. Again, I'm very complimentary of that. That black and white quilt that was next to you a second ago, I don't think the lime green goes in there. Is that a good example of maybe what we're talking about, mixing and matching a little bit?
Yeah, so this is a new quilt that'll be out for fall. And it mixes the gradation line, and then I've got some solids in here from your couture line, which is perfect because it's a nice pop of color. And well, even though it's not scrappy, it still gives you the feel that, you know, you can kind of mix and match things. So this uses a full fat quarter bundle and then some solids.
I loved it. Now, I am supposed to know this answer 100%, and I'm embarrassed that I don't, but that is the quilt for the back of the actual pattern sample. That's one of the ones that we're using as the inspirational quilt, correct?
Yes, and to still keep it scrappy, I made another version which is hanging behind me.
I would have never known that was the same project.
Yeah, it really, the color just changes it completely, and it's still the gradations fabric. You know, that line is all the triangles, and then I pulled out and I used the cocoa, which looks like this when I put it all together. So here's all my scraps that I haven't been able to get rid of because, I'm sorry, I'm a scrapper. And these are pretty cool triangles, and I know that there's just something amazing waiting to be made from it.
Yeah. Yeah, that cocoa has really been fun. Exactly. Well, I like how you blended both of the basics too, because gradations is a new basic that's coming down the pipeline. It won't even be shipping to the quilt shops for a few months after you see this video. Cocoa's already out there, and it really reads. Like, what's neat is I can tell the quilt behind you on camera has got a little bit of texture, but I can't quite see what the texture is. And so for me as a quilt enthusiast, I want to do this. I want to get in closer, you know, like I'm constantly looking deeper into the project, which turns out really, really neat. So yeah, no, I wouldn't have noticed. And didn't you tell me earlier that that pattern is also on the back of your pattern you have, or did I get that wrong? It's a secondary colorway.
Yes, so since I love scraps, and I also believe that like you shouldn't buy a tool if you're only going to use it for one task. You should be able to use it for multiple uses so that you're getting your money out of it. So I wanted to give you two options. I wanted to give you just the pure black and gray with the pop of color, and then for those who want to go and do it again, a completely different version. And it's the exact same pattern. All of the grays and blacks are all in the exact same places as the pop of color and the black that are on the original version. So you'll be able to make it all with the same patterns and the same technique.
Really, really, really cool. Do you have more show and tell sitting next to you? I'm a big fan of show and tell.
Yeah, so I do. I have another quilt that I just made. So these are getting ready to go to long arming. But I just finished this one, and it is for, obviously, it's the Land I Love.
Land that I love, yep.
Okay, so this was really quick and easy to do. It's perfect for jelly rolls. I used full yardage for it, but I'm looking forward to kind of bringing it on a few hikes and being able to maybe have a couple of picnics. I'm thinking of it's going to be perfect for the summer.
Yeah, well, super, super neat. And that you're having a pattern coming out for that one, as you said, is shortly?
I do. It'll be out on the site soon, and then it'll be perfect timing for 4th of July. You can make it in an afternoon, I promise.
Nice. Super cool. Super cool.
And so if you want to see some of my other ones that are, just simple, but they're still scrappy, I've got a couple others, and this one's fully loaded, and it has every color on it. It's my little color story rainbow connection type deal.
Right? Beautiful.
Scraps. It's a simple pattern that's just on repeat. And this pattern just hit the stores and is Yeah, so this pattern just hit the stores, and I've made it in a couple different ways. I've made it in all red, and then I've made it in this color, and then the rainbow color configuration, and I'm in the process of making it again in my green scraps. So it's perfect for using your values and understanding the difference and really kind of working your way through the rainbow.
Now, I thought of a question while you were showing that quilt, and I can't believe I've never really thought of this question before. But when you're writing patterns, but you focus on scrap-based coloring or concept, does that make it a harder challenge to write the pattern because you can't just say make this block and then repeat it 40 times over? Or how do you communicate when you're dealing with scrap patterns?
So I break everything down into, you will need a total combined yardage of XYZ in this color.
Okay.
Whether it's this color value, like a light, medium, or dark, and you're gonna need, I don't know, 5 fat quarters, or, a yard and a half, or something along those lines. And then I make sure that I write within the pattern, you can utilize your scraps as long as combined it equals X amount of yardage.
Got it. Or maybe let's say if it was more monochromatic or something, you might say you're going to need this much dark blue, this much medium blue, this much light blue, but it still is a accumulation or a sum of your total scraps.
Yes. And if you're only making a block, I'll say you only need, 6 to 10 inches of this piece, but then make sure that you have a coordinating or a high contrast value so that when you put them together, they look beautiful.
Yeah, because I think contrast, I know for me, I'm a spaz. I love my coffee. I'm Mr. High Energy, but you see it in the kind of work that I like to be around. I like bold colors. I like high contrast. I like a lot of energy. But I also feel that in a lot of the quilts that I've seen you making and pushing for that contrast. So you definitely have a great eye for color, even when using scraps. And one of the questions I didn't ask you earlier, but I really like to ask about photography is how are you evaluating contrast? Like I noticed that again, the photos looked very crisp. And in my opinion, that comes from control of contrast and things. So is that part of your study? Is there something you can share with us newbies that need to learn?
Well, I tend to gravitate towards colors that I love, and I really do not utilize a lot of the muddy or dirty colors. I usually in the light and bright, just personally. That's what I gravitate towards, and if I'm at a shop, that's what I pick up. So, but one of the things that you can utilize is your cell phone. You can use your cell phone when you're looking at your fabrics, lay them all out, and then just use the black and white feature and see if there is a smooth gradation of color across the board when you're looking at them. And if one pops out and it's too dark or it's too yellow or, it's something, utilize the tools you have, and everybody has a cell phone these days.
And so are you looking for a nice, like even across those blue scraps or those red scraps, you're looking for a nice gradient of shade, no real standouts? Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, it depends on the piece that I'm making, but for the most part, yes. I try to make sure that there's an even flow of color so that when I put it all together in a quilt and stand back, there isn't just one block that overtakes the entire quilt, especially if I'm making that block on repeat in 4 or 5 places. I want to make sure that it's, evenly paired.
Right. And something else you mentioned that's really important that I think a lot of us forget to do is evaluate our quilts at 2 different distances, the right under our nose and then the way far back. So when you first walk into the quilt show, and hoping your quilt's in the center of the back of the room and everybody sees it from 200 feet away. And it's a whole different impression of the project, it's...
Yeah. And you really want to make sure if they are seeing it from 200 feet away that they're looking at it for the right reason.
Right. I don't want to know. Is there a story behind that statement?
No, I'm just saying that if you're not looking at your fabric colors and all of a sudden, you see that one quilt in the corner and you're like, the print is beautiful, the layout is amazing, and the stitching is completely on par, but that one striped fabric doesn't match with any of the rest of the florals. So you just have to either make sure that you 100% love it and you're making it for you, or, how you're going to utilize it. And I'm also a huge believer in that your quilts are made to be loved and used. I do not believe in just having them like hang on a wall or sitting in a corner collecting dust. Like, everyone in my family sleeps under a quilt every night, and everyone has their own. So I throw them in the wash, we use them.
On your Land That I Love quilt, you said this is going to be a super easy, fun, you can do it with strips, and I'm taking mine on a picnic. Like, that's exactly what you said about that. Like, you're not planning where you're hanging it on the wall. You're planning like what adventure the quilt's going on first. I love that.
Yeah, just like I take the dogs in the backpack, I roll my quilts up and I put them in another pack and we take them out. My youngest and I, we went on a waterfall adventure, and we took a quilt and got some fun photos and, kind of hung out with it a little bit. Like, we spend so much time agonizing over the right colors and the right patterns and all that stuff. It's a shame to just let them sit there and collect dust. Get them out. Make sure you're using them. You want to enjoy them.
Wow. That's huge sentiment. I almost should just like wrap up the interview right there, because that's such an important thing that you just said, is like, use these quilts, give these quilts away, share these quilts. They aren't going to do us any good. We have insulation for other purposes. We don't need to keep these in the corner of our sewing rooms like I do. I'm really embarrassed how many quilts are sitting right in that corner right now, folded up, unattended to. They need to be loved on a little bit. So that is wild. So what's next for you, Heather?
What's your challenge?
Oh, you've got me a challenge, huh? Get those quilts out. You just want my quilts. That's not...
See a couple quilts in the wild.
I've been working on an idea that I can't say much about because I want to be the first one to blow everybody's socks off with this idea. But yeah, I was actually, one wasn't any incredible thing, but recently I climbed a windmill to hang a quilt, which was I have a fear of heights. And when I got done and my friend had the shot of their quilt hanging from that windmill, I was like, I'm so glad I climbed that windmill. But at one moment I yelled back, I'm almost out of adrenaline. This has got to stop soon. Like, I was getting pretty nervous hanging, trying to get this quilt hung up and stuff. But yeah, I've been out on some adventures with some other than standard cameras and some quilts lately. So I've been having some fun. Hopefully it will show up soon. It hasn't been perfected yet.
Very cool. I can't wait to see.
Me too. I gotta get it. I gotta pull this thing off. A couple of different ideas. And I was just gonna I just confessed what's next for me. What's next for you? What are you working on? Do you have anything that's not completely top secret you can tell us a little bit about?
Let's see. I've been really working on some new quilt patterns that I want them to be easy pickup items that they feel confident in making. So they're going to build their skills as they go. Of course, they're going to use their scraps or their favorite fat quarters and things of that nature. So I guess I would say be prepared to see more of my picture blocks getting out there in the wild and either coming to a store near you or on my site.
This is a perfect time. I normally ask you to plug all of your social stuff at the end of the video, but we still have to do the mystery questions. So why don't you go ahead and plug at the moment now all of the places that people can follow you and support you, and all of the places they can learn from you and see all your awesome work, please?
Okay, so that's really easy. So I am at thesewingloft.com, and I'm at the Sewing Loft on Facebook and the Sewing Loft on Instagram and all that jazz. So if you just type in the Sewing Loft, you're gonna find me.
Fantastic. And I also was reading, the Sewing Loft, was that kind of like a community group that originally started, or did I read that into something somewhere?
So my goal has always been to educate the community. I don't want anyone to feel nervous about sewing or that they can't do it or anything else. It's like riding a bike. If you can put your foot on the pedal, I promise you can do it. Riding a bike or driving a car, you can do it. And it only takes practice to get those perfect points or your lines completely straight. And I don't want anybody to worry about that stuff. So if I can share like a little bit of knowledge to help the community, improve their skills, I think that's great. And I've kind of done my job. But I do have a large Facebook group that people come and they share all of their works, and it's all scrappy based. So If you are working on any scrap project or anything of that nature, we share it 24/7, 365 from all over the world.
Wonderful. And anybody can participate there.
Yep, anybody can, and it's just Scrappy Girls Club on Facebook, and you can find me there. I'm pretty much hanging out there a lot more than I'm hanging out anywhere else.
Nice, nice. And I'll make sure for all of you that those links are just down in the description below as well, so you can just bounce down there, click on those, and be over at Heather's sites and enjoy all of that. So I kind of hate to let you go, Heather, but I know I've taken an awful lot of your time today. Before you go, however, I'm not sure if you've heard about the mystery box of questions. So this little mystery box of questions is quite well traveled, and this is going to be really fun for me. Maybe it'll be fun for you, we hope. So the mystery box of questions was curated for a quilt show, so I could do interviews. And there's this whole stack of all of these mystery questions. But we've been asking these questions, and on the other interviews with the other brand ambassadors, I've been holding out an entire stack of cards and saying, pick a number between like 1 and 15 and 1 and 10 and all of these things. And without even intending for this to happen, we are down to 2 questions left. And what happens is you get to pick the first question and I'll read it, and then you get to answer it. And then you get to pick my question as well, and then I'll read it, and I've got to answer the question because I think it's only fair. If I'm putting you on the spot, I ought to put myself on the spot also. So with that being said, now I unfortunately I can see the questions. I don't like either of them, but I'm going to, instead of I could cheat if I said numbers 1 through 10 or 1 through 2.
Yeah, I'm just going to say right or left.
Left, you already said left? Okay, this was left. Everyone knows it's the tattooed arm is the left one. Okay, so Heather's big question. Are you ready? Are you ready? This is important. Okay, question is, which pre-cut would best describe you and why? Here are some of the choices in case you forgot what the pre-cuts were. Fat quarter, charm pack, square, and I hope this isn't the one, strip roll. So, Heather, which charm pack or pre-cut best describes you? Fat quarter, charm pack, square, or strip roll? I am so sorry.
Well, I would actually say that it was down between 2, but I'd probably lean more towards the charm pack because you never know what you're going to get, and there's a lot of variety and speckled flavoring in every package.
It's charming, and we're just going to leave it at that, right? You were vacillating between 2. What is the second one you were going to be?
Yep. So the other one would be the jelly rolls. And that would be because you still get all the colors and the variety, and it's not just a straight line because, I'm sorry, I don't do anything in a straight line.
I love it. I love it. Good answers. Good answers. And a tough question. These questions were really, really challenging, most of them. Okay, are we ready for mine? Okay, this isn't bad. This isn't a bad question. I have a good story to back this one up too. Here's my question. Do you consider Monopoly to be a game that you play with friends or enemies? And my answer is both. And it happened on Christmas Day this year. My son was given the wonderful National Parks version of Monopoly. And we had more family members than pieces, so we decided to play as teams. We all teamed up, but we weren't with necessarily our significant others. Although I believe my wife and I were partners, but my son and his aunt were partners, and my mom and maybe my daughter. It got ugly, and like we almost had to like rearrange family members, and like because of the cutthroat nature of what some of the competitiveness of some of our family members. And we're dealing with, making deals and cutting deals with other people. And I think the problem was the significant others were on opposing teams. And yeah, it definitely became a game that started as friends and definitely drew some lines between enemies at the end. So.
Okay, so what's your favorite piece then? Like when you go, we played Monopoly a lot as a kid, and I always pulled up one of those little pieces. Which was your piece that you would move across the board?
Well, I haven't played Monopoly in a million years, and the new one for the national parks has a bunch of cool new pieces as well. Like I think one was a Ranger's hat, which I thought was pretty terrific. I chose the camera, of course. And it was a cool, like old-fashioned camera, and I thought that was pretty terrific. I want to say I was the race car before when we used to do Monopoly, and I'm guessing you were the Scotty dog because you love dogs so much. But
No, I actually was the shoe. I've always been the shoe. For whatever reason, that's the one that I gravitate to. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's just funny. Like, what does that say, you know?
well, an old shoe you are definitely not, but a creative force from the fashion world and into the quilting world today, and a great educator and wonderful person, and lots of inspiration out there, Heather. So even though you might have chosen that old shoe originally, I think you are a shooting star and doing fabulous things. And I really wanted to say thanks for being here with me today and doing the interview and opening up your studio and telling everybody a little bit about yourself. So thanks for being here.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
Everybody will be watching you and visiting you on your social media. And until then, we will see everybody next time at another episode of Making It Fun. Wow, you are still there. Thanks for sticking with me till the end of the video. I know, I get a little long-winded sometimes. But if you did enjoy today's video, make sure you check out a few of the other ones we've created. I think they're terrific. And of course, please subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the little bell to be notified. I don't want you to miss a moment of the fun. Stay safe and happy sewing.